Ladies, I'm Jodi Carlton, and I am a marriage and relationship clarity coach. And I know you just took a quiz because you've been seeing some traits in your husband that you're not really sure how to interpret. You've got some dynamics in your relationship that you're not sure about. So we're going to try to get you a little bit of clarity here today. And one of the words that keeps coming up on the internet is narcissist or narcissism. And some of you know a little bit about what that means and what it doesn't mean. And we're going to talk about that more today. So you are in the right place if your husband has called you some pretty mean names. And I don't talk, bitch is not a great name, but if he's gone a lot farther than that and said some worse names than that, then we're going to talk about what that can mean. Maybe you feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells in your marriage, or you feel dismissed or ignored, like you're very insignificant. Maybe your husband rages at you and you feel frightened, and there are times where you're not really sure if you're safe. A lot of you may feel kind of responsible for making your marriage work and for paying attention to how you phrase things or how you approach your husband, or just doing all the work in the relationship. And you may have just totally forgotten who you are and have lost your identity some. So again, I'm Jodi, and I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia in the United States. And I've been working as a therapist and coach online for almost 20 years now, right at 20 years now. And more recently, my work has been focused on marriage clarity, answering some of those questions when we're facing doubt about which way to go in a relationship and how to make a pretty big decision about where a relationship is headed. That's where I really help a lot of folks with those big decisions. And I put on this slide that I'm a men behaving badly specialist. And really what that means, I think men are awesome in general, but sometimes there are guys that just are clueless, or they can just be really jerks. And then there's the narcissists that are really toxic personalities. And so I want to help clarify for you what all that means. So I'm going to help you understand your husband's personality and behaviors a little better and get you some clarity about your relationship. And we're going to talk about the answers to some scary questions, some of the questions that you may have, and I may have touched on some of that in the quiz that you just took, and help you determine the best next step for you and your relationship. So we're going to talk about 4 guys in today's quiz. So we're going to talk about the clueless guy, the socially awkward guy, Mr. Jerkface, and the egomaniac, which is your narcissist. And I'm going to go into these different types of categories of guys. These are men who behave badly, okay? So let's talk about Mr. Clueless first. So he's actually a pretty nice guy, and he does love you. He actually loves you very much, but he's really unskilled at reading those verbal and nonverbal cues from you. And so he's just kind of just clueless to women. He does not understand women very well at all. And so his social and emotional intelligence are kind of underdeveloped, and but ultimately he's just clueless. The blunders that he makes are not really meant to hurt you. Now let's talk about Mr. Socially Awkward. He is beyond clueless. So he has no idea what's socially appropriate sometimes, and so he can really just kind of say the wrong thing or miss the joke. And when he's talking with people, he can actually be inappropriate in social situations, but also in your relationship. He may say things that really hurt you in a way that he just totally misses the boat, and you're constantly wondering why in the world would he say something like that. And his emotional range is probably quite narrow, so you may have kind of extreme emotions, and sometimes he may even have wondered if you're bipolar, because your emotional range is so much broader than his. But again, he doesn't try to hurt you intentionally. But when he feels criticized, he may respond kind of like a cornered animal with fangs bared, and he really can hurt you. But his intent is not really to hurt you. It's more to protect himself. So Mr. Socially Awkward, he can have traits that are confused often with narcissism, but the core basis of his behaviors are very different than someone who has narcissism. This guy actually may have Asperger's, or what we call high functioning autism. And so this is something else that I have a lot of expertise in. And so I have found so many women come to me wondering if their husbands are narcissists when it actually turns out that he has Asperger's. And so we kind of flushed that out and figured it out. So then let's talk about Mr. Jerkface. So he can also be a pretty decent guy, but this is usually when he really needs to show up. He can actually get it done, but he's kind of immature, and so that makes him a little bit self-centered and abrasive at times. He can also be pretty clueless on occasion, especially about women. But there are times that he does actually know the appropriate thing to say and do. He just doesn't want to, and that comes back to immaturity. He does love you though, but he can be pretty insensitive to you, and he can hurt you because of his selfishness. And that, again, that comes back to maturity. Now, let's talk about Mr. Egomaniac. Now, this is our narcissist. So he's very concerned about his image. So socially, he may actually be the life of the party, and he may have every hair in place a lot of times. But you get a very different person behind closed doors, and he can be extremely nasty and mean and very hurtful. And a lot of times other people are really surprised to hear about how he is to you, and if you even share with them, because it may seem like you've lost your mind in some ways because he's such a different person to you. His ego is massive, and so he has this inflated sense of self, and he really has to feel superior to you and others. And so he'll be constantly doing things to keep you feeling beneath him. And so in order to do that, a lot of times he'll make you feel very confused, and you'll experience what I call emotional whiplash regularly. So you'll feel like he's reaching out to you and he loves you, and then all of a sudden he'll do something so hurtful, and it will be this surprise to you, and you constantly feel like you're off balance, and like you aren't even remembering things correctly, and it's very confusing. Now, Mr. Egomaniac will actually love bomb you, like I was saying just a second ago, with affection and loving gestures, but then he'll turn around and make you feel completely insignificant. But his goal ultimately is to keep you around, to basically keep you on a tether in a way. And so if you threaten to leave, then that's when he's going to love bomb you. He may get really angry, but he's going to love bomb you and make you feel really valuable, and then just totally pull you down off of that tower. Mr. Egomaniac is not actually capable of experiencing love. And so these other guys, actually, they can, but they're immature, or they have other barriers that are blocking them. But someone who's a true narcissist they don't developmentally, they're not actually able to connect to other people. They're not able to attach in a healthy way. And so what may look like love is actually a script of sorts that they're playing in order to keep you around, which feeds their ego. So let's go through these questions now. And we're going to talk about which of these guys applies to each of these questions. So I want you to think about how you answered these questions as you did the quiz. So does your husband frequently say or do things that people think are rude, like other people, not just you? So this could easily be Mr. Clueless, also Mr. Socially Awkward, Mr. Jerkface, or Mr. Egomaniac. So really all four of these guys have traits of just, sometimes they can just be rude and stick their foot in their mouth or offend other people. Does he frequently tell you that conversations didn't happen or that you're remembering them wrong? So the question is this about manipulation, or is this his perception of what he actually remembers? Now, we all remember things based on our perception of what's happening in that moment. And so you and your spouse or your child or your coworker, you may all have different memories about how a conversation took place. But someone who's being manipulative will try to make you question what you remember. So Mr. Socially Awkward, now he is more likely to have a different perception of what was said. And so he truly believes that you said you were going to dinner tonight, and you truly believe you said that you were too busy to go to dinner tonight. And however that played out, you both heard it very, very differently. He's not trying to manipulate you, though, into questioning yourself and doubting yourself. Mr. Jerkface may actually want you to question yourself if he's being selfish about something. And so it's, for him, it's not as much about perception. It's about getting what he wants. And in moments where his immaturity is really kind of coming through, he may be manipulative. Mr. Egomaniac, this is actually one of his main strategies to keep you off base, is to make you really wonder if something, he'll tell you that you're crazy. No, that didn't happen. You'll have a conversation and you'll agree to something, and then he'll no, what are you talking about? I'm concerned about you. Your memory's not so good. Or he'll make you feel really bad about the way you remember something. He'll guilt you and shame you. If your husband has ever threatened you in a way where you are actually fearful for your safety or your finances or any other way, then this is 100% Mr. Egomaniac. Men who are manipulating, these other guys are not going to make you feel unsafe. They may be immature and selfish at times and self-centered, but they are not going to make you feel unsafe and like your livelihood may be in danger, or to make you feel like they've got it all under control, and that you don't have access to your money, or they block you from moving through the house or leaving a room, or this is a sign of a narcissist if these types of behaviors are happening. Okay, so question 4. Does your husband sometimes get upset or angry when the kids are noisy or in noisy environments? Now, we all can feel that way sometimes. But Mr. Socially Awkward, like I said, some of these guys actually may have a high-functioning form of Asperger's. And we all can have sensory thresholds where we're more sensitive to sound or light or smell. And if these are the types of things that your husband seems to have a low tolerance for the noise and the chaos, or even certain food textures or crowds or temperature, then you may have a guy who's socially awkward who may actually have high functioning Asperger's. Now, Mr. Jerkface can just be self-centered and be like, make those kids shut up. And he can just be annoyed, easily annoyed and irritated, again, back to his immaturity. And then the narcissist is also going to be so self-involved, and so the world is so revolving around him that he can also get pretty easily irritated if anybody else, whether it's you or the kids or anybody else, is disrupting his sense of whatever he wants to be going on in his world at that moment. Okay, does your husband frequently tell you that you're stupid, or other names like bitch or whore, or even worse? This is actually a form of bullying, and it's verbal abuse. Now, we all get into arguments sometimes, and we may say you're a jerk, you're an ass. But if he regularly is calling you these really demeaning names, then this is not okay, and this is a narcissist. This is Mr. Egomaniac. Mr. Jerkface may actually do some name calling, and you may do some name calling too. But there's a difference between some frustrated name calling and name calling just out of the blue, or just for no reason. If he comes home and says, why are you cooking steak for dinner? I wanted chicken. What are you, stupid, you bitch? And some of you are experiencing this type of thing. Those others of you are going, oh my God, my husband would never do that. If you're saying, oh my God, my husband would never do that, you're not likely in a relationship with a narcissist. But if your husband is doing things like this, then you likely are. So our appearance is really important to your guy. Does he really pay attention to what he wears and his hair? And does he actually have preferences about what you wear and what your kids wear? This could be Mr. Socially Awkward if he has some OCD type personality traits about wearing the exact same kind of clothes over and over again, or textures bother him, or tags, then that could be a sensory thing where he needs to have the same kind of clothing on, or he may be, but Mr. Socially Awkward may also be clueless about fashion, and Mr. Egomaniac is not going to be clueless about fashion because image is super important to him. So this is a really good way to distinguish between those two. Mr. Socially Awkward, he may have a lot of routines about what he wants to wear and how he wants to look, but it's more about order for him. Mr. Egomaniac, it's about image. All right, last question. Does your spouse complain about or avoid going places with you where he has to socialize with acquaintances? And I'm not talking about his coworkers or his friends, but does he just not want to go out with you and have to be social? This could be Mr. Clueless because he doesn't know social norms and he struggles with how to be in social settings. Same with Mr. Socially Awkward. A lot of times he really does not like social settings because he does not pick up on those verbal cues and those nonverbal cues. So he's really uncomfortable in those settings. Mr. Jerkface, I don't know why I left him off, because sometimes his immaturity actually will make him not want to go places with you. But the key feature here is the socializing with acquaintances. Mr. Jerkface, he can go and socialize with acquaintances. That's not a problem. The other two feel really uncomfortable. And Mr. Egomaniac, he doesn't want to go because it's your friends and your social acquaintances. If they don't give him if he gets no payoff for that, then he's going to give you a hard time and not want to go with you. So let's talk about if you're in a relationship with Mr. Clueless. So he needs some improved relationship skills. And your relationship may need some improvement. So, the basics: communication, emotional connection, managing conflict, understanding expectations for your relationship, and those perceptual differences, personality differences, knowing your love languages. But if you're in a relationship with Mr. Clueless, these relationships are often fixable with some coaching. And so this is something that's not a showstopper. Mr. Socially Awkward, he may have some social anxiety or be introverted or just plain shy. But like I said, he may have Asperger's. And so if your guy has trouble making eye contact, or maybe he's overwhelmed by those sensory things we talked about, or he's got those rigid, structured routines, maybe he needs a lot of personal space, or he doesn't understand your personal space. He's kind of up in your grill too much. Or another key feature of Asperger's is if he has highly specialized interests, and he can go on and on and on and on and on about a history or trains or whatever, to the point where you're just like, oh my God. And other people, he's not reading the cues that other people are not interested in anymore. You may have an Asperger's guy on your hands, and so we need to talk about it. Relationships with Mr. Socially Awkward, though, they can also be fixed to an extent, depending on his ability to understand how to relate and to raise that emotional intelligence a little bit, but they can be fixable. So Mr. Jerkface also needs those improved relationship skills and some personal discovery. He's pretty insecure, and that his immaturity is a problem as well. But so he may act like a child at home. He may be really, really successful in his job, but he may act like a child at home with you. And he usually wants things to be better, but he just doesn't know how to fix them. And he has poor self-confidence about the relationship, which also makes him be more of a jerk at times. And he may feel kind of pressured, overwhelmed by pressure to provide for you. And so he's just projecting some of that negativity onto you. And these relationships can also be fixed. A lot of it depends on his willingness or his motivation to fix it. Same with the other two, really. But now let's talk about the narcissist. So he's going to have that exaggerated sense of self-importance. He feels entitled and requires constant admiration. I already mentioned he expects to be recognized as superior, even when it's not warranted. Sometimes he may be fired from jobs or let go because he's being insubordinate. He will sometimes exaggerate his achievements and talents to others. He's really preoccupied with being successful or beautiful or a genius about things, and he wants to be admired and kind of adored and worshipped. Has no problem taking advantage of others, and really has no conscience about that, no remorse, no guilt, and he really struggles to recognize the needs of others. He can be very verbally and sometimes physically abusive. These relationships are rarely fixable. If you're in a relationship with the narcissist, then you are in a very toxic situation, and I strongly advise you to get some help with this. So if you're feeling even more confused after all of this and you're wondering what now, so let's talk about how you can actually get some help for this. If you're recognizing yourself as being in a relationship with one of these guys and you're just not really sure how to proceed and where your relationship is going, and you may even be asking yourself, do I need to stay in this marriage or do I need to leave this marriage? And if so, how do I figure that out? How do I answer that question, and then what do I do? So what I'd like to offer you is an opportunity to just chat with me about your personal situation. Because you've watched this training, I'd like to extend that to you. And I can talk to you a little bit about how my coaching program works to see if that's going to be a good fit for you. So the call to talk to me about this is actually complimentary, but there is an application process. I have a limited number of calls to meet with women and talk about the coaching program, and then I have a limited number of spaces in my coaching program. So what you can do is click the link at the bottom of this page and then fill out the application form. It will allow you to go ahead and select a time on my calendar when I have some time to talk to you, and then we'll jump on a call and we'll talk about it. And so there's really no reason not to. If you see that you're in a situation like this and you're really struggling to figure out what to do next, I really encourage you to get on a call and let's talk about it. So I hope this training has been helpful to you, and I look forward to talking to you soon.